At 5, Facebook under fire.
But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, foreign interference in elections, and hate speech, as well as developers and data privacy.
The social network CEO on the hot seat before congressional lawmakers.
I'm going to ask Mark Zuckerberg today whether he really has control of this model that he's built.
This is what you get. Do you think the average consumer understands what they're signing up for?
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry.
All right, check this out. This was this morning's line for spectators to enter the hearing and listen to Mark Zuckerberg's testimony. The line stretched down a 200-foot hallway, down a flight of stairs, and into another hallway in an adjoining building.
Now that line right there shows you just how much people around the nation wanted to hear what Mark Zuckerberg had to say. Susanna Frame has today's exchanges between Zuckerberg and lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry. I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here.
When you discovered the Cambridge Analytica that had fraudulently obtained all of this information, why didn't you inform those 87 million?
We did take action. We took down the app, and we demanded that both the app developer and Cambridge Analytica delete and stop using any data that they had. They told us that they did this. In retrospect, it was clearly a mistake to believe them.
Now, on the subject of Cambridge Analytica, were these people, the 87 million people, users, concentrated in certain states? Are you able to figure out where they're from?
I do not have that information with me, but we can follow up with your office.
Okay, because as we know, that election was close and it was only thousands of votes in certain states.
In May of 2016, Gizmodo reported that Facebook had purposely and routinely suppressed conservative stories from trending news. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias. Do you agree with that assessment?
Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out in the company, is making sure that we don't have any bias in the work that we do.
Are you aware of any ad or page that has been taken down from Planned Parenthood?
Senator, I'm not, but let me just...
How about MoveOn.org?
Sorry?
How about MoveOn.org?
I'm not specifically aware of those.
How about any Democratic candidate for office?
I'm not specifically aware. I mean, I'm not sure.
You have a 14-year history of apologizing for ill-advised decisions. After more than a decade of promises to do better, how is today's apology different?
So we have made a lot of mistakes in running the company. I think it's pretty much impossible, I believe, to start a company in your dorm room and then grow it to be at the scale that we're at now without making some mistakes.
Would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
No.
Okay, now the point of that last question was to turn the privacy spotlight on Zuckerberg to ask if he would want his personal information exposed like that to everyone.
Washington Senator Maria Cantwell was among the lawmakers grilling Zuckerberg today.
We don't want to come back to this situation again. I believe you have all the talent. My question is whether you have all the will to help us solve this problem.
Yes, Senator. So data privacy and foreign interference in elections are certainly topics that we have discussed at the board meeting. These are some of the biggest issues that the company has faced, and we feel a huge responsibility to get these right.
So how did Zuckerberg do in the hot seat? King 5 political reporter Natalie Brand and GeekWire's Monica Nicholsberg join us from the newsroom with some analysis today.
Lori, David, we're going to get Monica's take in just a minute. But first, let's hear from Senator Cantwell herself, who asked some pretty direct questions of Zuckerberg today, given her tech background. I asked Cantwell how she thought today went.
I think he's sticking probably to a script, and what I would hope that he would do is become the leader of this effort to basically to be the smart guy that figured out Facebook, to be the smart guy to outfox those individuals who are using these applications to invade individual members of Facebook. Look, I'm looking for how aggressive is he going to be in helping us police this issue? Because once the consent decree was signed, it seemed like they were serious, but yet so many things have transpired. Well, we know that this isn't the end of all of this in an information age, so we want his help, but we want his true, forceful help in trying to solve this problem.
From here, and how did Zuckerberg do today? I'm joined by Monica Nicholsberg from GeekWire. Thanks for being with us. What were some of your big takeaways today?
Well, I think that he definitely struck the tone he wanted to. He was very apologetic and was able to get the message that I think Facebook wants to get across. One thing that really struck me was it seemed like the lawmakers were asking more exploratory questions than really grilling him as intensely as I expected. There was some of that, but it seemed like they genuinely wanted to understand a lot more about this very complicated thing that transpired.
And you were saying that maybe some senators didn't quite have the full grasp of the technology or the level of detail that, you know, a techie has.
Yeah, which is fair. A lot of Americans don't, and I think that's part of what makes this so scary is that it's really hard to understand how our information is being used and if it's being used in ways that we didn't really consent to.
Yeah. So in your mind, what happens, what will you be watching for tomorrow? Did we get a lot of new information out of today? What happens next?
We got a few nuggets that were interesting. I thought one thing that was really interesting was it seemed like Facebook might be open to the idea of a paid model, which has been discussed and explored as a possible option for getting them away from relying so much on third-party advertisers. Mark Zuckerberg said that there will always be a version of Facebook that's free, but that implies that there might be a version that's not. Tomorrow, I think that it might be more grueling testimony from him. I think that lawmakers, now that they've asked their informational questions, may want to dive deeper into questions about how this can actually be prevented next time, because it seems like all of Facebook's actions have been very reactionary so far.
And Senator Cantwell did ask some very specific questions, again, because this is more her area of expertise, her tech background, and given that she's from a very techie state. One of the things she asked about was whether the new European data privacy regulations should be applied in the U.S. Do you think that's something that could actually happen? Because there is a lot of fear among innovators and in the tech community, I would imagine, about the idea of increased regulation online.
I think it's definitely possible. And one thing that's important to remember about these tech companies is that they're global in scale. So if there's a huge part of the economy that's requiring this, if Europe has these new regulations, then have to build out compliance for that anyway. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. As far as Mark Zuckerberg is concerned, I feel like one thing that really carried through today is anytime regulations came up, he seemed very into the theory of it, the idea of the regulation, but he really wouldn't answer questions that were, will you actually support this? Will you help us make this law? He said that the details really matter, and he's just not sure yet.
Well, we'll keep watching both tomorrow and the days to come. This is a conversation that is definitely going to continue. So thank you so much for being here, Monica.
Thanks for having me.
We'll send it back to you in the studio.